Tonight, you'll go to bed in a house full of walls, alone in a room, behind a locked door. Your ancestors never did that. Not once, not ever, in 200,000 years of being human. For almost the entirety of human history, sleeping alone wasn't a lifestyle choice. It was a death sentence waiting to happen. So why does modern loneliness still feel like something is wrong with your body? Because it is. But the real answer is far stranger than you just need more friends. Your loneliness isn't an emotion. It's an alarm. It's ancient. It's biological. And it evolved for a world that no longer exists. Start 200,000 years ago, on the open grassland of what is now East Africa. A lone human doesn't survive out there. Not for long. No claws, no fangs, no fur thick enough for the cold nights. Just soft skin, slow legs, and a brain that burns calories faster than almost any organ in the animal kingdom. Alone, you're prey. In a group, you're a predator. So evolution did something almost ruthless. It made isolation feel like physical pain. The psychologist John Cacioppo spent decades at the University of Chicago studying exactly this feeling. He called loneliness a biological signal, not unlike hunger or thirst. Hunger tells your body it needs food. Thirst tells your body it needs water. Loneliness, Cacioppo argued, tells your body it needs people. Because for most of human history, people were the difference between living until morning and not. Feel that tightness in your chest after a cancelled plan? That's not weakness. That's 200,000 years of ancestors who didn't make it, quietly whispering at you to go find your group. Now here's where it gets stranger. Loneliness wasn't just uncomfortable to your ancient ancestors. It was often fatal. And not in some abstract, someday you'll get sick way. The anthropologist Robin Dunbar spent years studying primate brains, looking for a pattern most people never think to ask about. Why is the human brain so much bigger than it needs to be just to find food and avoid danger? His answer became famous. Bonds, relationships, keeping track of who owes who a favor, who fought with who can be trusted with your child while you're away hunting. Dunbar found that the size of a primate's social group correlates almost perfectly with the size of its brain. Humans, with the biggest brains of all, evolved to track roughly 150 meaningful relationships at once. 150. Not 5,000 followers. Not 300 contacts saved in a phone you never actually call. So when you feel disconnected, scrolling through a feed of hundreds of people, your brain isn't broken. It's doing exactly what it was built to do, quietly screaming that something is missing because mathematically, something is. Anthropologists who have spent time with modern hunter-gatherer groups like the Hadza of Tanzania describe something almost impossible to picture from inside a locked bedroom. Nobody sleeps more than a few feet from another body. Nobody eats a meal facing a screen instead of a face. Camps are arranged so that the fire sits at the center and every person sleeps within arm's reach of someone who would notice instantly if they stopped breathing. That wasn't sentimentality. That was infrastructure. Your ancestors built their entire physical world around the assumption that being unwitnessed, even for a single night, was a risk worth eliminating. And loneliness didn't just cost your ancestors friendship. It cost them survival in the most literal sense possible. A solitary early human couldn't take turns sleeping while someone else watched for predators in the dark. A solitary early human couldn't share the meat from a hunt big enough to feed one person for 2 weeks before it spoiled. A solitary early human couldn't have someone else hold their child while a broken leg healed. Loneliness meant exhaustion. Exhaustion meant mistakes. And out on the savannah, mistakes rarely came with a second chance. Here's the part that should genuinely unsettle you. The anthropologist Sarah Blaffer Hrdy spent years researching something she called cooperative breeding, the idea that human children were never raised by two parents alone. They were raised by grandmothers, aunts, cousins, older siblings, neighbors, a whole rotating cast of what she termed allo mothers. A human infant, Hrdy argued, is born expecting a village, not metaphorically, biologically. Your ancestors' babies cried for multiple caregivers because multiple caregivers were supposed to answer. Isn't it strange that the loneliest generation in history is also the first one raising children almost entirely alone, behind closed doors with no village in sight? Think about that for a second. You weren't just built to want company. You were built assuming you'd never truly be without it. Which means the modern world didn't just make loneliness more common. It broke a promise your biology had been making since before you were born.
Now here's the twist, the part your brain doesn't want to admit. Your ancestors weren't lonely because they lacked people. They were surrounded by people, constantly, almost suffocatingly, from birth to death. Privacy, as you understand it, barely existed. You would have known every person in your group intimately. Their smell, their walk, the specific sound of their cough in the dark. And yet the alarm system for loneliness still existed back then too. It just triggered differently. It triggered from exclusion, not isolation. Being cast out of the group. Being the one nobody sat next to at the fire. Because in a world with no locks and no privacy, the only kind of alone that ever mattered was social alone. Cut off, unwanted, unseen by the people who were supposed to see you. So flip that forward 200,000 years into your bedroom, right now. You can be surrounded by more human contact than any ancestor ever imagined and still trigger that exact same ancient alarm. 100 likes on a photo can register as connection for a moment and then evaporate into nothing. A read receipt with no reply can feel to your ancient brain like being quietly excluded from the group that keeps you alive. Your brain cannot actually tell the difference between a text left unread and being left behind by your tribe at the edge of the grassland. It runs the exact same threat detection either way. Notice how many of the places your ancestors relied on for casual, low-stakes contact have quietly vanished from your life. The sociologist Ray Oldenburg had a name for them. Third places. Not home, not work, but the barbershop, the corner diner, the porch step where neighbors actually knew your name. Those third places used to do the job your village once did, catching you in small doses before loneliness had a chance to build. Most of them are gone now, replaced by drive-thrus, delivery apps, and doorbells nobody rings anymore. You didn't choose to lose them one by one. The world around you simply stopped building them. That's why loneliness today feels so disproportionately heavy. It's rarely really about the friend who didn't text back. It's an alarm built for Savannah-level stakes, going off over a smartphone notification. Have you ever felt genuinely wounded by something as small as being left out of a group chat? That's not you being fragile. That's your oldest survival instinct doing exactly what it was designed to do, just aimed at a threat that no longer has any teeth. Here's what the research actually shows about what happens when that alarm keeps ringing and nobody answers it. Julianne Holt-Lunstad, a psychologist who has spent years studying social connection, found that chronic loneliness carries a health risk comparable to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Not a minor inconvenience, not just feeling a bit down. A measurable increase in early death, on the scale of a habit doctors spend entire careers trying to get people to quit. Your body still treats disconnection as a 5-alarm emergency, even in a world where disconnection can no longer actually get you eaten. So what did your ancestors actually do about loneliness before therapy, before phones, before any of it existed? They didn't manage it. They prevented it structurally by making true isolation almost physically impossible. They ate together, every single day, without exception. They slept in clusters for warmth and safety and the simple comfort of another heartbeat nearby. They worked in groups where tasks were split so that no one person ever carried a burden entirely alone. Grief had rituals. Fear had rituals. Even boredom had rituals. Because unstructured alone time was rare enough that it needed a name and a ceremony whenever it happened. Loneliness wasn't something you fixed after the fact. It was something the entire structure of daily life was built to prevent from ever happening in the first place. You don't live inside that structure anymore. You live in a world engineered, often quite deliberately, to keep you scrolling instead of sitting across a table from someone. Apps are built to maximize the minutes you spend alone with a screen, not the minutes you spend with another human's actual voice. And your ancient alarm system has no idea the rules ever changed. It's still running the same 200,000-year-old code, checking constantly for the same ancient threat. Are you safe? Is your group nearby? Would someone notice if you disappeared tonight? Consider how strange your daily commute would look to an ancestor watching from a distance. Dozens of humans, sometimes hundreds, packed into the same train car, standing close enough to feel each other's breath. And yet every single one of them stares down at a small glowing rectangle, carefully avoiding eye contact with the tribe standing right beside them. Proximity without connection would have made no sense to your ancestors. To them, physical closeness and social bonding were the same event. You've somehow learned to separate the two, and your nervous system never got the memo. It still expects that standing shoulder to shoulder with another person means something. When it doesn't, the alarm doesn't switch off. It just gets confused, and confusion, to an ancient brain, often reads as danger. So the next time that hollow feeling shows up, uninvited, in a room full of noise and notifications, don't call it weakness. Don't call it a flaw in your personality that needs fixing with more willpower or a better morning routine. Call it what 200,000 years of human evolution built it to be. A very old, very accurate signal doing exactly its job, in a world it was never designed for. Tonight, you'll go to bed in a house full of walls, alone in a room, behind a locked door. And somewhere underneath all that modern comfort, a 200,000-year-old voice is still quietly asking the only question that ever mattered. Who's watching the fire with you?